Empires rarely collapse in a single moment. They fade the way a candle burns out, slowly at first, then all at once. And the most consistent sign of that decline is not the fall of an army, or the rise of an enemy, or the end of a dynasty. It begins when the money itself starts to lose its meaning. At first, the decline is almost invisible. A little inflation here, a slight increase in government borrowing there, a quiet change in the value of the currency. But deep beneath the surface, something far more dangerous is happening. Trust is quietly slipping away. When people begin doubting their money, they begin doubting their future. And that doubt has destroyed more empires than any invading army ever could. History shows a strange, almost mathematical pattern. Every time an empire begins noticing that its finances are spinning out of control, it tries desperately to fix things. But the solutions chosen by its leaders almost always make things far worse. Instead of confronting the root of the problem, overspending, corruption, weak productivity, or military overreach, empires choose the easy escape. They print more money. They borrow more. They tax more. They manipulate interest rates. They redesign their currency. They announce new plans with reassuring names. But no matter what they call these actions, they always follow the same logic. Postpone the pain, push the consequences into the future, and hope the next generation will fix it. This is exactly how Rome spiraled into crisis. When its coins lost silver content, citizens immediately noticed. Soldiers returning from campaigns demanded more pay because their salaries bought less food. Merchants raised prices because they could no longer trust imperial coins. And ordinary citizens saw their savings vanish as the currency slowly turned into worthless metal discs. Rome tried fixing the problem with wage controls, price freezes, and brutal punishments for merchants who refused to accept debased money. But every law they passed made the economy worse, not better. The empire wasn't solving the cause. It was fighting the symptoms. Fast forward centuries to France during the Revolution, and the pattern repeats. The government printed paper money called assignats, promising these notes were backed by land. The promise sounded credible at first, but as more paper flooded the system, confidence evaporated. Stores began demanding hard assets instead of paper. Farmers refused to sell food unless buyers traded gold or goods. The government responded by executing greedy merchants, accusing them of sabotage. But the real sabotage came from the printing presses the government refused to shut down. In modern times, countries don't rent out guillotines. They use softer language, stimulus, liquidity injections, economic support, quantitative easing. But the effect is identical. When a government creates new money faster than the economy creates new value, the currency's power slowly drains away. And once people notice that the money does not hold the same strength it once did, they change how they behave in ways that accelerate the collapse. This psychological shift is the true breaking point. People stop behaving like participants in a stable economy and start acting like survivors in a failing one. Money is spent quickly before prices rise. Saving becomes pointless. Businesses shorten their planning horizons from years to months, from months to weeks, from weeks to days. Workers demand raises constantly. The wealthy retreat into assets, land, gold, property, collectibles, foreign currency. Anything the government cannot print. And the poor, the majority, suffer quietly as their cash loses value faster than they can earn it. Once this psychological fracture happens, the decline becomes irreversible. You cannot force a population to believe in a currency simply by telling them to. Somewhere deep within society, the silent switch flips from trust to fear. And after that moment, no speech, no promise, and no policy can restore the currency to what it was. History proves this repeatedly, from Weimar Germany to Yugoslavia, from Zimbabwe to Venezuela. The numbers change, the faces change, the language changes, but the pattern never changes. The next stage is inevitable: the rise of the shadow economy. When official money loses trust, people naturally turn to alternatives. In ancient times, they traded wheat, livestock, cloth, salt, commodities that held real value. In modern times, citizens rely on dollars, euros, crypto, goods-for-goods trade, or under-the-table exchanges. The black market grows not because people are criminals, but because the official economy becomes too unrealistic to obey. The government responds in predictable ways, imposing price controls, arresting illegal traders, raiding businesses, restricting foreign currencies, threatening shop owners. But none of it works. No law can force a population to pretend that worthily. Every empire begins with a dream, a vision of greatness, power, stability, and prosperity. In the early days, when an empire is still young, its leaders are disciplined, focused, almost obsessed with building something that will last forever. They design laws, stabilize markets, create fair taxation, and establish a currency that their citizens can trust. Money becomes the backbone of the empire's ambition, the invisible bloodstream that keeps everything functioning, from the military, to the roads, to the markets, to the smallest shop at the edge of the kingdom. In this stage, the currency is strong, not because of magic, not because of luck, but because of discipline. Every rising empire treats its money with respect. Early Rome minted coins with pure silver. The Persian Empire controlled gold mines with strict accuracy. The British Empire tied its currency directly to gold. Even early America backed every dollar with real value, refusing to print more than they could support. Stability was a principle, discipline was a virtue, and trust was sacred. But empires are like humans, they change with time. As they grow older, richer, and more powerful, something begins to shift. Power creates a fog, a kind of blindness. Success turns into overconfidence, and overconfidence turns into the most dangerous illusion of all, the belief that the rules no longer apply. This is where the long and invisible death of an empire's money truly begins. It never starts with a collapse. It never starts with chaos. It starts with small adjustments, tiny changes, decisions that seem harmless in the moment. A bit more spending, a few exceptions, a slight increase in the supply of money, a temporary solution to a temporary problem. And the people cheer because things get better for a moment. They feel richer. They feel more powerful. They feel like their empire is unstoppable. But behind the scenes, that small decision has awakened a monster. Rome began mixing copper into its silver coins. Kings began cutting tiny pieces from the edges of gold coins. Modern governments replaced precious metals with paper, and then replaced paper with promises, and then replaced promises with nothing but trust. Each change seemed logical. Each change seemed harmless. Each change seemed necessary for the empire's growth. But no empire, not one in history, has ever escaped the consequences of weakening its money. As the money becomes less real, the empire's behavior becomes less responsible. Leaders slowly forget the discipline that created their prosperity in the first place. They want more armies, more buildings, more influence, more allies, more everything, and they fund it not through productivity, not through innovation, but through the easiest method of all: expanding the money supply. This is the beginning of the hidden pattern. At first, printing more money works. It fuels expansion. It creates jobs. It makes people feel wealthier. But what people don't realize is that money printing is not the creation of wealth. It is the redistribution of wealth. Every time new money enters the system, the old money loses a bit of its value. The currency becomes weaker, softer, diluted. And the empire steps 1 inch closer to its downfall without even noticing. People only begin to feel the effects later, when prices start creeping up, when the cost of bread rises slightly, when rent becomes a little more expensive, when wages no longer stretch as far. The change is slow at first, gentle, almost invisible. Leaders insist everything is fine. They declare the economy strong. They say inflation is temporary, controlled, or within expectations. Every collapsing empire says the same thing. But no one can escape the mathematics of money. When you increase the supply of something, its value declines. This is not politics. This is not ideology. This is just reality. And as the value of the currency begins falling, the empire enters its second phase, the phase of subtle decay. In this phase, the people become uneasy. They don't understand economics, but they understand life. Their grocery bill has doubled. Their savings don't go as far. Their salary buys less each year. They feel the pressure even if they can't explain it. And when people feel pressure, they change their behavior. They begin saving less. They begin spending faster because tomorrow everything will cost more. And this shift in behavior, across millions of people, accelerates the decline. The empire tries to fix the problem the same way it caused it, with more money printing, more borrowing, more spending. Leaders believe they can outsmart the very forces they awakened. They believe they can push the consequences into the future. But history shows that no empire can outrun the weight of its own debt. Debt is the silent killer of empires. It grows slowly at first, then suddenly. What begins as harmless borrowing to fund infrastructure, education, or warfare turns into an uncontrolled